We're working off a horribly high statistical base from the 2006 Counting the Homeless report, published in 2009. We know that at least 187 people of every 10,000 are homeless in Alice Springs. This with a recognised possible undercount of 19% for Aboriginal people. This compares to a national average homeless rate of only 53 people of every 10,000. Similar homeless rates are to be found throughout the Northern Territory and sometimes worse. We seek to stop the use of punitive responses to homelessness. Homelessness is not a crime. Rather, it is a consequence of a range of complex issues that impact on people's lives. Right to a Home seeks amendment to the Alice Springs Town Council Management of Public Places bylaws, where they have a negative impact on people who are homeless. Further to this, Right to a Home advocates for the development of an Alice Springs Town Council social inclusion policy that truly reflects the need to work with and for people who are homeless. We contend that it is not an effective response when local government authorities prosecute people who are homeless for sleeping rough when they clearly have limited alternatives. There is a clear lack of accessible, appropriate accommodation in Alice Springs for those who are homeless. The Murra Visitors Park, with its 2-week maximum stays, is not a panacea, filling a gap laudably as it does. Similarly, staying with family and friends in public and private housing leads to overcrowding, in turn putting at risk those households' tenancy arrangements. On the 21st of July, public waitlist times for Territory housing stock here in Alice Springs range from 39 to 56 months, depending on dwelling type. There is a clear lack of readily accessible social housing here and in the communities, as Elaine was suggesting, that it serves. In a similar vein, the removal of swags, other bedding and personal effects that are clearly not abandoned but rather left in public places can only be seen to show disregard to people who are homeless and sleeping rough. Rather than treating the lives of people who are homeless as some unsightly blot on the public domain, the Alice Springs Town Council should be taking steps to bring about positive change in the lives of these people. We'd be looking for any bylaws that are impacting on homeless people to be given some due consideration and be rescinded where appropriate. I mean, we'd certainly suggest that the no camping bylaw should have been drafted with people who are homeless in mind. We don't want to see people who are sleeping rough for lack of another place to stay getting penalised. Rather, we'd like to see the Town Council, along with the broader community, actually maybe doing something positive to lead those people kind of forward through their life rather than hitting them with a fine.
Have you got any specific ideas about what could be done as an alternative to penalising people who are sleeping rough?
Well, I mean, we could follow the line of not actually penalising people who are sleeping rough, and for the Town Council to consider some provisions for people who don't have any other alternatives. There could be ablution blocks provided, there could be showers, there could be a whole host of things that could combine to allow for some dialogue with those people and to kind of set them up on a positive footing. As far as the bylaws as they're currently practiced, I think just the idea of confiscating or removing the supposed abandoned goods that are swags, bedding and so on, and regardless of where they might end up, I understand that they're not going to the tip face anymore, thankfully, would be a positive thing. I mean, those people, that's what they sleep in, that's their possessions. You know, a little bit of humility and respect would go down a long way.
In terms of the Murra Accommodation Park, how successful has that been in reducing homelessness?
I understand that it's been really successful in providing a place for people who are visiting from out of town to have somewhere to stay that isn't, you know, rocking up on a family member's doorstep and suddenly leading to further overcrowding or overcrowding of their houses, be it public housing or on the town camps. So I think it's been a good success in that way. But if you're talking to homeless people who are resident in Alice Springs, like long-term resident, it's not a solution.
What is the solution then?
Unfortunately, forgetting about the bylaws for a moment, And I think certainly the NT government's between a rock and a hard place on this one. The solution is greater spending, more funding for new housing stock, appropriate housing stock for different people who may be impacted by homelessness at the moment, and also the allied services that go with them. We've got to be working very, very leanly and precisely with our provision of services for people who are homeless here in Alice.
Those
With
houses,
a provision of services for people who are sleeping rough, such as ablution blocks, wouldn't you acknowledge that there'd be the problem of the development of informal, long-term or medium-term camping in those areas?
Which then leads to the need for, some more substantive spending on the ground on building works. I don't think this is a problem that's going to be solved anytime quickly. We've all seen how long it takes for building works to kind of come off the ground, such as the work on Percy Court up Murramurra and so on. These projects all have a period of gestation. I think the key thing is there's been very limited spending on housing other than those facilities in Alice Springs for some time, appreciating that Treasury only has so much money to spend. That's what's required, a housing first type model where people can have a home and start to move forward with their lives rather than facing down prosecution. But I take your point. It's the idea of people just setting up an alternative camp or the like and relying on those ablutions facilities isn't ideal.